This is where you give me wings, wings of hope, wings of peace. This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins. This is where you give me wings, wings of hope, wings of peace. This is where it all begins. You are my everything. You're the reason for my being. Help me to bring your love to all. Teach me no fear. Be my light and be my song. Help me to bring your love to all.
There's something which is right at the heart of it all, that unity is about personal encounters.
Yes.
And so we're meeting in God, we're sharing in the life of God, but it is still only happening because it is a personal encounter. But the implications are huge. And certainly it builds up relationships between Christians and therefore heals the rift among Christians when we share that kind of life together, that personal encounter. And then certainly it has a big impact for the world. But that has a huge implication, I think, because it means that whenever we meet in that way, we're making, in effect, a strong political act.
Yeah.
And I think that is where hope for the world exists. We have it in our hands. We're not impotent. We can already start. So, Martin, I think God gave you an interesting preparation for this meeting.
I missed my flight from Stansted, and it was really a recognition that Jesus was present in the suffering of plans having to be reshaped. And in a way, it meant I had to take a step of recognising the love of God in that moment and launching myself into the new reality of getting there. And, of course, when I was there and meeting people, hearing other people's far more difficult stories of having had to overcome challenges, and recognise that, in a way, that was a preparation for encounter with God, with one another. It was a face of Jesus forsaken, we might say.
So, face of Jesus dying on the cross, who transforms everything. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And who invites us to see things that we might feel cross about as actually a fresh moment to love and to start again.
I'm impressed by that, not just because of your personal experience, but because, as you hinted, it seemed to be something replicated in different ways by everybody, and so there were deep spiritual roots to this meeting, which I think is really important. Because one of the things that really struck me at it was the power of the spiritual dimension, both in terms of the meeting, but also the importance of Christian unity. That seemed to me to feed some of the understanding that I think we achieved during the meeting of the urgency of ecumenism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that really came home to me personally too.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I had to hold forth about that. And but I saw the whole thing with new eyes. And I think if you look around the world as it is, and even more as things have gone on since then, it's, there's a current of hatred and rising tides of violence throughout the world. That's just a fact. I think the big question, or one of the big questions, is how do we as Christians respond to it? Actually, how do we as human beings respond to it? But we as Christians, we have particular equipment for it, I think. And that is that the church is supposed to be God's instrument in the world. We are called, all of us, together to be the presence and the experience and the sign of God's work in the world, of the kingdom of God.
And the divisions between different branches of the church, and in many areas an unwillingness to work together, or being baffled as to how to go about reaching out to one another, on the one hand hampers the effectiveness of the mission and work of the church, and on the other hand, to people who don't know anything about church, it's just another sign, not so much of diversity as of ineffectiveness and brokenness, and unattractiveness.
Yeah. But I suppose even that's covered by what you were saying in your experience, that the crucified Christ covers also that.
And that's the key reason why the world needs to hear the gospel afresh, and why the church needs to be able to incarnate, to embody the presence of Jesus.
Indeed. So that all the rubbish through the work that Jesus does in us, as we open ourselves up to his love that comes to us in the rubbish, becomes then the means for us to be able to love more deeply, and therefore to participate more fully in his presence. And that's lovely.
Yeah, certainly in our experience of sort of Western culture, people are so suspicious or frightened of otherness, of difference, whether it's difference of culture or belief, or even the way you vote or the football team you support, readily flare up into violence and hostility. And we've lost the art of seeing the other as a gift and as something that we actually need to encounter and discover in order to make each of us more fully ourselves.
Though Christian unity is seen in those ways of us discovering each other as gifts. And we have a new vision of ecumenism, one that's rooted in past visions. And I think that's one of the things that was achieved at this particular meeting. But I think in the context, first of all, of the urgency of it, that's some of the things we need kind of to grasp. Yeah. Because we have waited too long to start healing the division among Christians.
Yeah.
A lot has happened in a very short time. It's a little over 100 years since the movements towards real effective movement towards greater Christian unity began. But now, with the way the world is falling apart, we can see the need for it even more. And I think part of that need is because we need an alternative culture. Different way of being. And when we live in that culture, we're changing the mentality of the world. Because behind the mentality of violence and of, I have to be bigger and greater and stronger than you and everybody else, there is a way of seeing things. And we change our way of seeing things. If we change the way of seeing things, then we change the actions that flow from it. So one of the things about ecumenism then is that we have the opportunity, as we deepen Christian unity, to change our mentality as a church, in the sense that we're opening ourselves up all together more to one another and therefore to God. And the whole discourse of unity that Jesus prayed for on the eve of his death then becomes the characteristic of how we relate to one another, how we relate to the world, and therefore our impact on the world. I think it's incredibly important. And if I may, just one further thing, it seems to me that this dialogue among Christians is the one that gives life to the other dialogues with people of other faiths, or dialogues with people of no particular faith, but still have things that deeply they believe in. but also in terms of a whole conversation with the modern world. So as you were hinting at before in terms of the secular rise of secularism, but that's one part of our culture. But this dialogue helps us to live those other dialogues more, partly because some of the things we do in dialogue in terms of treating one another's gift actually help us to understand how to do those dialogues better, but also more importantly because this fuels our energy and the presence of God among us. Yeah, I would like to say more about that, but the thing that comes to my mind about that, and I'd like to ask you a question about that, how you understood it, is Jesus made a really interesting distinction between union and unity.
Yes.
Unity is the powerful thing. Union is a good thing, but it's not the same.
And that union is a human construct, and it is based on arriving at a way of being together in which each participant gets the optimum out of it. And so the different parties uniting in a union are looking for what they can get from it. Whereas unity, on the one hand, is a mystery because it's rooted in the love of God, and unity is a relationship that you go into not knowing what you're going to get out of it, but trusting in the goodness of the other and in the fact that the experience of unity would be greater than the sum of all the expectations you might bring to it, but that it's rooted in the love of God. And therefore it's far bigger than you can anticipate or predict or plan for.
Absolutely. And of course, unity means that we have the presence of God in our relationships.
That's right.
And that is really powerful because it's making God on earth present in a way that he would not otherwise be.
And there were a couple of presentations in the meeting that really struck me quite powerfully. There was a group from Northern Ireland, Catholics and Presbyterians and Methodists and a variety of different church background. And one of the things they were sharing was really a fruit of the experience back in the 1980s of a Presbyterian congregation in a Roman Catholic parish whose ministers were building a friendly relationship and who guided their congregations into wanting to encounter each other. A very well-to-do, middle-class congregation of Presbyterians near Queen's University, a very working-class congregation of Roman Catholics at the Callan Monastery on the Falls, a very poor and already in the 1980s a place full of fear and hatred and violence. And one of the fruits that's grown out of that continuing and growing relationship is a festival of arts and music and all sorts of stuff that unites the whole of Belfast, because people from every part of the city, the bits that are almost Catholic enclaves and the bits that are almost Ulster Presbyterian enclaves and so on, opening up to each other and discovering that they all really draw their energy from the same gospel, which commands us to love one another. And then there was another experience shared from the Washington State in the United States of a Presbyterian congregation and a Catholic congregation who came to the point of recognising they wanted to encounter each other and learn from each other, with the foreknowledge and understanding that they were not going to agree on doctrinal matters, and they deliberately chose to dialogue over matters in which they knew that they wouldn't agree as a means of encounter and growing in trust and understanding and relationship, both at a churchy level and at a human level. And that was, again, particularly driven by the relationships of the ordained leadership, but it engaged the people completely, and the only condition of entering into this dialogue, which was very structured and systematic, a number of meetings put in the calendar in which particular things will be talked about. But the only condition on participation was that you go with an open heart and a commitment to respect the other person and what you're hearing from them, their right to believe the doctrines that are important to them that you either don't understand or misunderstand or deeply disagree with.
Yeah, one of the things I think is important about that conversation is that it was the people. It's lay people who are not thought of as the normal ones who'd engage in theological dialogue.
Not experts or enthusiasts.
Exactly. And the other thing which I think is really important is that in their conversation with one another, they began to understand one another better and also to change their minds.
Yes.
And I think that's a really important dimension of the question of dialogue. And it also came out in the meeting as we were speaking about the way in which we can do dialogue as Christians. And that's because sometimes there is what I call the here I stand, I can do no other mentality, where we think that in order to have integrity, we have to cling to our personal ideas about things. Yeah. And it's a false idea of integrity, because what we've done is we've identified truth with what we think. Now, I have no doubt that each one of us has a grasp of truth. I'm not denying that. But actually, truth is Jesus. Yeah. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So it's not about us trying to get the world to define itself in according to our opinions, but it's about us discovering Jesus. And I think that the purpose of dialogue is that by growing together, we understand more of Jesus. And that deep listening, when I'm unsettled by hearing from you, is about me opening up to see things in a new and deeper way, so I can receive the gift that you bring me. It may be, in fact, I think it generally is, that what emerges from us both together is a surprise.
Yes.
That's such a common experience. It might even be that whatever comes out more resembles, although it's not the same as, what one or either party thought, but for both it's seen in a completely new way. And that's because we're discovering more of Jesus. And I think we really need both to appreciate the gifts that each of us have, which are a partial grasp of reality. Even if I say, for example, God is love, my understanding of love is so inadequate because of the infinity of God's love. I know that I have stuff to learn on it. So as we appreciate what one another has grasped, then we're enabled to go on what in fact is a journey. Dialogue's a journey to understanding, to discovering Jesus.
Yes. It's not an accident that a lot of the resurrection stories in the Gospels begin with someone not recognizing Jesus. Mary Magdalene in the garden, the two on the road to Emmaus, the fishermen who've caught nothing, and so on and so on. And if our dialogue is rooted in a desire to love God and to love one another, what happens is that because we're being faithful to Jesus' new commandment, his presence within each other becomes clearer And it stops just being me as a human being fascinated with your perspective on things as another human being, but that I become aware that it's Jesus in me who is loving Jesus in you. And then we get the surprise of recognition. It's true, we've seen the Lord. Mary, Rabboni. Because when Jesus in me is loving Jesus in you, we are entering into the life of the Trinity. And that is both amazing, but as you said earlier, it's also always surprising.
Yeah, it is. Because the place where we meet, if it's me, Jesus, you, Jesus, is Jesus. It's Jesus among us.
Yes.
So it's not simply two subjectivities mixing things together. It's opening ourselves up to the one who is the truth. I find that totally amazing. But there's a lot of resonances with other things that happened at that meeting.
To find you, Lord, in everyone that comes my way. Teach me to sing the song of love. This is where it all begins. This is where you give me wings, wings of hope, wings of peace. This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.